housekeeping matters. We will finish that treatises workshop today at the end of class. And remind me there is a correction on the workshop sheet that I need to give to you to make the question make sense. I have it written down in my notes, but definitely remind me because I don't want you to be confused. Also, housekeeping, the exam schedule. Actually, I had somebody ask me today, when is the exam? I need to ask you all to send to me your exam schedule. You can see the dates that your classes that have exams on the spring course schedule instructions. This is from just the law school website on our TWEN page. I put a link to it right here on the home page so you can get to it easily if you don't have another way. And you will see the courses listed and the tentative dates for your exam. They usually stay that way so we can rely on that. And then what I will do once I get all 20 of your schedules is I will figure out probably 2 or 3 days in which everyone can take the exam without a conflict. So it may be that one of those days you can, but the other 2 you can, or certainly one of them you will be able to. Hopefully, if you get back to me soon enough, I can get you those dates next week. So please send them in as soon as you can. Although please don't do that now because we're going to dive into some material in just a moment. Speaking of material, there will be one more screencast for you to view for next week, our Introduction to Statutes. I tried to have a little fun with it, so hopefully you will too, but please be sure to view that. Okay. Any questions? Let's dive in and talk about law reviews. What I'm going to focus on today are law reviews, and I'm going to use law reviews as a jumping off point for some advanced searching techniques. Mostly that extreme Boolean we were starting to talk about last week and having some fun with, but some other advanced techniques online as well. So let's also take a look, though. Most of those advanced techniques are going to be advanced techniques on Lexis and Westlaw, but a lot of you have had excellent questions about where do I find stuff for free. And one of the places you may or may not already know about to find articles for free, and this is law review articles, but also any kind of scholarly articles, and that is Google Scholar. How many people here have heard of Google Scholar? Okay, just about everybody. Obviously, to get to Google Scholar, you Google Scholar, so that's easy enough. But let's take a look at Google Scholar, mostly to sort of think about some of these advanced techniques which aren't available on Google Scholar. As great as Google is, and probably its main, well, not its main advantage, it's free and it's easy. And actually, I'm going to edit our search just one more time. Putting quotes around Google Scholar to tell Google I want that phrase. So that's an example. Google uses basic Boolean searching. So if you say, I want that phrase, I don't want health and maintenance and organization all over the place. I want it as the phrase, you use the quotes. So I'm going to go ahead. So you can see the standard filtering on Google. What this is on the side here, basically because I've told Google Scholar in my settings that I'm here at Hofstra, Google has a way of telling what we subscribe to. I actually don't know how that works, but it's kind of cool. So Google Scholar will tell you, since I'm at Hofstra, how I might be able to get to some of these articles. So we can see untreated anxiety, predictors of outpatient mental health, impact of health maintenance organization, care authorization policy on emergency department. Not quite emergency department, what we're interested in. But so you can go through and decide, does this apply to my client? Will it help me? It's free, so you can take a look. Why I wanted to point out Google Scholar is just to point out the need to think about terminology. One of the mini themes for today is thinking about your words. I actually had a great email conversation with Tosin earlier. Thinking about your terminology can be very important. You all know law is words, right? So those words become very important. So the difference between will and may is really important, right? So here on Google, even, you think Google, oh, Google Doesn't really matter what I throw in, Google will figure it out, and a lot of times that is actually true. But note the difference in our results. I'm taking out health maintenance organization. That's just HMO spelled out, right? Means the same thing, but we get different results. So obviously, even though the concept HMO and health maintenance organization is the identical concept, right? Google doesn't know that. Google is smart, but it's not that smart. Okay, so to reinforce this, and honestly, to have a little bit of fun, where did it go? My tab went away, so sorry about this. As I mentioned in our first class, I'm a fan of cartoons. And this is maybe not exactly on point, but it gives you an idea of how important words can be. Ooh, you want to play?
What's the matter with you anyway? Don't you even know a rabbit and a pussy run? It's true, Doc. I'm a rabbit, all right. Would you like to shoot me now or wait till you get home? Shoot now! Shoot now! You keep out of this. He doesn't have to shoot you now. He doesn't have to shoot me now. I demand that you shoot me now. Okay. Would you like to shoot me now or wait till you get home? Shoot him now. Shoot him now. You keep out of this. He doesn't have to shoot you now. Ha! That's it. Hold it right there. Throw down trouble. It's not he doesn't have to shoot you now. It's he doesn't have to shoot me now. But I say he does have to shoot me now. So shoot me now. Yes. Oh, no, you don't. Not again. Sorry. This time we'll try it from the other end. Look, you're a hunter, right? Right. And this is rabbit season, right? Right. And if he was your rabbit, what would you do? Yeah, you're so smart. If I was a rabbit, what would you do? Well, what again? Very funny.
Okay. So pronouns probably won't be too much of an issue, but hopefully it brings across the point with a little bit of humor, so at least some of you are fans of Bugs Bunny, that your choice of words can be very important, as it is for poor Daffy. Okay, so as we saw with Google even, take away a little bit of fun, words, Google searches words. Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg searches words. We'll talk about using Boolean connectors to put together those words because what we want to search really are ideas, right? Even the simple idea of HMO, also expressed as Health Maintenance Organization, it made a difference that we use the exact same idea, but we use the different words. So part of your job to effectively utilize these online tools is essentially to start to think about how to express your concept, your idea, in words. Another example I like to give is, some of you noticed, I'm a cat fancier. It makes a difference whether you search for cat or feline. Now, they're technically not exactly the same thing, but we all kind of think of them the same thing, right? And that's important too, because it's commonly understood, even if it's biologically or scientifically not quite accurate, it makes a difference what words you choose and how you put them together. legal example of that, if you would like to move on to something more relevant to law school, since that's where we are at the moment, think of the word fire. There's fire, the flame, the stuff in the fireplace that can destroy. It might be a tort or a crime, if arson, if somebody causes it intentionally. And then there's the word fire in the employment context, to terminate employment. If you're searching the word fire in whatever database, Google, Lexis, Westlaw, any database on the planet, you will pull up documents using it in both ways, again, depending on the context and, again, depending on what other words you use and how you put them together. So you want to start to think about, just as I thought about in Google, I want health maintenance organization as a one phrase as opposed to the words health and maintenance and organization. Okay, so I like to think of that as basically we human beings think in concepts. Computers don't yet do so. We human beings are still, don't know for how much longer, I think for your lifetime anyway, we human beings are still smarter than computers. Computers are still stupid. So we have to help make computers smarter by thinking about a word, thinking about alternate ways of expressing ideas, thinking about how to put our words together, whether in quotes or the connectors we'll talk about in just a little bit. So let's dive into Westlaw, and we will look at, let me sign in again, we will look at law reviews, and we will look at law reviews utilizing some of these ways of putting words together to better express our concepts. And as you can see, I searched secondary sources for liability HMO. Hope you don't mind, I'm not going to type it all over again. We've done this a couple of times before. So what you will see here, of course, as we've discussed, we can look at our filters within secondary sources, and we'll see the different types that we've started to talk about. If I want to find law reviews, sometimes I have to tell Westlaw or Lexis I want to see further down, so you just click either more or publication types, and sure enough, I can tell Westlaw, yeah, go ahead and filter to law reviews. Note, we see restatements there also. I'm not going to choose restatements. I had asked you to view the restatements screencast. We're not really going to discuss restatements too much. I have some of your questions that you put in the screencast, and we'll talk about those at the end of class and any other questions you might have. But I think the screencast pretty much covered what you want to think about with restatements, but I'm just pointing out where you will find them here on Westlaw. Okay, but I am limiting to law reviews because that's what we're focusing on today, and in Westlaw, as I've said, I have to remember to apply filters because I don't always, sadly. Okay. So the first advanced feature I sort of suspect you already know about is search within results. I think a couple of you used it in one or more of our workshops at this point, but in case you didn't, basically, obviously it's a way to search within what you already have. One nice thing to remember for those of you for which this will be relevant, search within results is free. Once you do a broader search on Westlaw, if you're in a transactional environment, I think, Steve, this might apply to you, you strategically will want to do a larger, by larger I mean broader search, so less specific search, and then do more specific searches using search within results because you won't get charged for that. You will still get charged to look at the document, but you won't get charged for the search. Obviously not true in an hourly environment because hourly is hourly, or by the minute, really. Okay, so to limit search within results, so I have liability HMO. Since we need to figure out what this preemption thing is all about, I'm going to search for that. And what I'm typing here, and we haven't gone over this yet, and I will in detail, but just to give you a sense of what it looks like, I know some of you know this already, so I have the word preempt exclamation because I want preemption, and then I'm telling Westlaw I want to find whatever form of the word preemption within the same paragraph /P as ERISA. One reason you absolutely have to know Boolean, because there's some of you I'm sure who's like, I just use natural language, it's easy, it's pretty good on Westlaw, and you're right about that. But if you want to use search within results, you have to know Boolean. I can't just put in preempt ERISA. because all I'll get is any document that has those words next to each. Well, actually, it's an and connector. So basically, bottom line, if you want to use search within results, and this is true on Lexis 2, you need to learn Boolean. As you can see, I will scroll down so you can see better. Westlaw tries to give you some hints and reminder on how to do that once you click on the search within results. Again, you have to click apply filters. And you get pulled in the results that meet both our original search and the new search terms we have added for search within results. Okay, so we've started to talk about the connectors. Let's just go into more detail so we're all on the same page. I know a number of you are already familiar with this, but just as a review for those of you who may not have encountered this or did so in the first year and it's all a little fuzzy. So basically the connectors are just that. They connect your search terms. So it's a way of putting together those words to express your concept. So just as we were saying, I want to express the concept of ERISA preemption. But I can't just use the phrase ERISA preemption, because what if a very relevant document says preempted by ERISA? It's not going to, again, computers are stupid. It's not going to translate that unless you tell it to. And the way you tell it to is by the connectors. So if we use the truncation symbol, which is on, this is just a reminder, which is on here somewhere, you can relieve yourself of the need to say preempt or preempted or preempts or preemption or preempting. I don't know about you. If I had to type all that, I'd have a typo in there in no time, which, by the way, a lot of computers are still stupid and won't correct for you. Google sometimes does, but not always, actually. Likewise, Lexis and Westlaw. The AND connector. Most of the systems we use assume that if you don't use a connector that you mean AND. So that's what Google does. If I just put in the words liability HMO, Google is assuming liability and HMO. You can actually use the AND connect. Well, you don't need to use the AND connector on Google. You can use the OR connector on Google. The OR connector would be what it sounds like, either or. So you might use the OR connectors. You can see the example on the handout for default OR disclosure. That you would use OR when you have words that mean the same thing. So if we were using connectors, we might use HMO or Health Maintenance Organization in quotes. So that way you're telling Westlaw, Lexis, Google, get me either or. Now Google's algorithm is good enough that you usually don't have to use and or. So actually what I said is a misstatement. Google doesn't assume and. It does its complex algorithm that makes it so great. Westlaw and Lexis, if you're using natural language, it doesn't assume and. It kind of will in the search within results. Basically, I would say don't guess what it assumes. If you want to use Boolean, use Boolean. If you just want to use plain language and let the algorithm do its work, do that. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because a lot of these you will use very rarely, if ever. For instance, the not or the exclusion, that's okay to use. You want to remember to use it at the end of your search string. I would say be very, very careful because you don't know what words are going to appear in the document. And if the author of the document is saying, I am talking about denial of coverage, not physician malpractice. If you type in your search, not physician malpractice, you'll exclude that document, even though the author explicitly said that's not what I'm talking about. So use it very, very, very sparingly. I do a lot of research, as you can imagine, and if I use it once a year, that's a lot. Okay, we already talked about using an exact phrase. So Health Maintenance Organization is a great example. My favorite example when I don't have Health Maintenance Organization is self-incrimination, right? You want that, if you're researching that issue, you want that as a phrase, put it in quotes. We'll talk about parentheses in a little while. So the truncation. Truncation is just a fancy word for shortening a word. So preempt is a great example. We truncated preempt to get, after the T, we put the exclamation, and that's the truncation symbol on Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg. Not on other systems, which we'll talk about later. So you will want to, another example is if you're in the employment context. You want the word employ, employer, employee, employment, employees, and I could go on longer, and you don't want to type them all after the Y in employ. So after the common part of the word. Another example is litigate. If you're talking about litigating, and for whatever reason you need to use that as a search term, then you want to put the exclamation after the T, right? Because litigate, if you do it after the E, you won't get litigating. A big board writer here, as you know my handwriting is atrocious. So G. So I want to put the exclamation there, not after the E, because then I won't get litigating. Yeah, you still have to know spelling. I mean, obviously, just open up another Google box and figure it out that way. My two favorite connectors when I'm using Lexis and Westlaw, and this is true only, and Bloomberg. This is true only for Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg. It's not true for Google. It's not true for many other systems. You'd have to look into each system to see. That's what's called proximity. So you notice I used preempt /P ERISA. /P is within the same paragraph. /S is my other favorite one within the same sentence. Sometimes Lexis or Westlaw will come back to you with some sort of error message that it can't compute. You might need to use a slash and then number. So 3 or 5 or 22. That used to be the old way of doing it before they gave us /S and /P. Yeah.
It's a slightly unrelated question, but I had a question about the connector you used for the search within results.
Okay.
I noticed that you used preempt for the search within the same paragraph as ERISA, but preempt is the root for like in the results preemption or preemptive. How come you didn't use that under a root expander? Because that was the root of preemption and preemptive.
I don't know what you mean by use it under a root expander.
Well, when the result would come in as the root preempt under like preemption and preemptive action under ERISA. So if you put in preempt under search within results, will it also return words that have the same root?
Yes.
Okay.
So you want to think carefully. So I wouldn't want to do, for instance, my example of litigating, I wouldn't want to do LIT exclamation, because then I get every word that starts with LIT.
Okay.
So you want to bring it back you want to truncate it as little as possible. So you want to cut off as few letters as possible before you put the exclamation. So what I might want to do, if I only wanted employer and employee, but not employing, I might do EMPLOYE exclamation. But if I wanted everything, so employing, employed, all of that, well, actually that would get employed. So it's not going to be perfect.
Thank you.
But you do the best. You make your best judgment. Okay. You see the example on the back, at least, at most. Sometimes you want a particular word to appear in your document more than once because it's very relevant. So you would, I usually just remember to spell out at least, and then in parentheses I put in whatever word, at least whatever, 5 or 4 or whatever number I want, and then in parentheses. I don't remember the abbreviations, and it works on the systems. Okay. Any questions? We'll be using these throughout today, so you'll see examples, and you'll have an opportunity during the workshop as well. So other aspects of advanced searching. So if I go back here, and now I'm going to go to secondary. And again, you can or You can choose to limit at this point or not. One advantage to not doing so is that if you are going to be using search within, this is a broader search. So it would save you, be a little more cost efficient. Paste in my that's not what I want to do. Yeah, actually, let me spell this out. This works out better. So just a little bit of review. So liab exclamation, because I want liable, liability, and so, you know, it's spelled a little bit differently. So this is I truncated at the common point, the root of the word. So liab exclamation, and remember you want spaces between your words and your connectors. Your truncation has to be right after the letter, so no space there. So again, liab /p, as I said, I'm a big fan of the proximity. And now here we're going to introduce parentheses, because when you want to group terms together, so I want liability within either HMO or health maintenance organization, because remember it makes a difference. I want to group those together as my alternative. I want liability or liable or whatever between either of those. So I'm going to put parentheses around that. So I'm going to say HMO. Make sure I'm going to write this or, because I want either or, again, just our standard Boolean, and then in quotes, health maintenance organization, again, proofreading to make sure no typos. And then actually I want one more alternative, because remember one other term we used was, or learned about, was managed care. Again, always good to proofread, and we'll give that a whirl. Alrighty, so here we get our results. Notice we have a nice sort. One of the advanced features, actually on most of the systems, Google, Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg. So let's sort by date. Here on Westlaw, we also have most cited. That sometimes can be useful to pull up to the top. And of course, so here I'm getting some state results. I'm getting Pennsylvania. I'm getting California. Pennsylvania. The problem with sorting by date is you then lose the relevance. So if we go back to relevance, and you try back and forth, and okay, so since we're talking about, so notice here, fairly far up on the 7th one, we have that, we've seen this before, the American Jurisprudence Proof of Facts, Third Liability Health Maintenance Organizations. The reason why I wanted to point that out is what a lot of students want to do is they want to limit by state. We're in New York, right? Ultimately, our clients in New York, shouldn't we limit by state? And my answer is possibly later on, but initially when you're first just learning about a topic, you might not want to, because you will eliminate references to these general resources that aren't state specific. And if you limit by state, you won't get those, and that would be a loss. You'll have to take my word for the moment that that's a really useful source, because I haven't given you an opportunity to read it. But as you can see, if I limit by New York, because we're in New York, and that makes sense, right? We're not going to get that particular source. So if you just scroll through, you would see it's all New York stuff, which is what it should be. But again, so you want to think about timing in terms of when you limit by jurisdiction. And I'm going to undo filters. And now, as promised, I'm going to go into law reviews. So, law reviews, Okay, so the reason I limit to law reviews was obviously one way to get there is to show you the advanced search. So you can see what we get before, and the advanced search is here in advanced. This advanced link right here. So because I've only limited secondary sources in my initial search, Westlaw is interpreting that I want advanced search for secondary sources. So what Westlaw lists for me are the different fields, the different portions of the different types of secondary sources that I might want to search. What you need to remember is to choose your source type if you want to use advanced. So here, just in the home page of Westlaw, I haven't chosen anything yet. Look, it's just all state and federal. If I go to advanced, I don't get very much in way of choice of different parts of the document. I basically get date, citation, name / title. If I go back and do as I suggested and go to secondary, I get what we saw. So I can search title, citation, author, preliminary, source, text, and then finally, if we go back to secondary sources, and we get really specific before we search, so in our pre-search filters, so this is pretty much, there's not much difference between law reviews and secondary, but you want to get at least as specific as secondary, because if you have any of you searched for law reviews on Lexis or Westlaw, and put in your search terms and just got a whole lot of irrelevant results. Mentioned your terms, but didn't get your concept. So this is one answer to that problem, is to go to secondary, go to advanced, and use the title field and tell Westlaw, please search the title for my words, right? Because the title is going to kind of describe what you're interested in. And you can see what Westlaw does is it puts in the search box, it tells Westlaw Advanced, and TI, not surprisingly, stands for a title. Ooh, I didn't copy my search thread. Okay, so I can do this. Okay, so bear with me just a minute here. I meant to copy my search. That, and I'm going to put that in title. There's title. So I'm going to copy part of it. Okay. So I'm searching the title for our search terms. And you might, because you're only searching the title, you might want to be less specific or not. Okay, and since we're talking about law reviews, let's apply the filters. Or I could have done the pre-search filter. So title is one advanced search. Another advanced search technique is if you find an article that looks relevant. So here's one. What if you could sue your HMO? A little old, 2003. Still might want to look at it again. Don't reject it because it's old, but be aware it may or may not be out of date. Another advanced technique is at least for Lexis and Westlaw, is if you do find something on the older side that's relevant, a law review especially, but other secondary sources also, take a look at citing references. Citing references are obviously other secondary sources that cite to this, so they have to, by definition, be newer, right? Because they're citing to it. So if you go to the Citing References tab and choose secondary sources, we can limit it to law reviews if we want, or not, and scroll through and see. Now look, that amateur proof of facts comes up again. And see what, again, far more recent articles that might be interesting in that cite our particular article. Now you are limiting yourself, obviously, to just people who cited this article, but again, a nice way to find more recent secondary sources, law review articles, as well as other secondary sources on your topic once you've found a relevant result. Questions? Pretty much the same strategies apply on Lexis. So again, we can limit to secondary ahead of time or not, up to us. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. And then I'll go with a shorter search because I'm tired of typing. And again, our categories, so law reviews comes up top because Lexis organizes it by the highest number. If I didn't see what I wanted, I would click on more. I've noticed restatements again comes under secondary. So since we're interested in law reviews, let's go ahead and limit that. And you see the same, we have our search within results. Same restriction apply, you must use Boolean when you're using search within results. Thankfully, they're the same. And again, you can see our results as we go down. Lexis also has an advanced search. Kind of nice thing, slightly nicer, not huge about Lexis Advanced is wherever you click on advanced search in Lexis, it gives you the boxes up top, but if you remember to scroll down, it gives you the choice to select a more specific content type. So I can tell Lexis I want an advanced search, but I want an advanced search with regard to law reviews. And then it brings me to the template that has the right boxes, the right fields, so that I can search the title again for the same strategy. See what that looks like on Lexis, although again, so now we have our terms as they appear in the titles. And we have the same advanced strategy in addition to search within results, in addition to advanced search to search the title. We can find if we find a useful document, law review, other secondary source, instead of citing references, we can tell Lexis, please shepherdize this document. And don't get all, and this happened, oh, I'm sorry, Steve, you have a question.
I would get back, but in Westlaw, is there an option that you have to select for those citing documents for a preview of where that document is cited in that document to show up? I saw it on your screen. So if you're on a law review article with secondary sources, you in your, right there, you have a full preview of where it's cited in the article.
I think that's here. Try most detail. Does that do it? If not,
Yes.
okay, I was going to say at the break I'll figure it out. Okay, so let's go back to Lexis. We've just shepherdized our LaraView, and yes, you can shepherdize all sorts of stuff as well as key cite all sorts of stuff, which is essentially what citing references is on Westlaw. And you'll see we shepherdized, and wait a minute, no documents found in citing decisions. All Lexis is telling us here is we didn't find decisions. All you need to do is remember to go to other citing sources. And then you get other citing sources. So you get LaraViews and other types of documents. So again, you can see more recent LaraViews and other secondary sources that cite to the article we started at and possibly is more recent, a more recent discussion of our relevant topic. Okay, and one thing you may have noticed, I'll point out, this will talk a lot, well, somewhat more about when we talk about cases are these topic summaries. So you can view these reports. Basically, these are summaries Lexis tries to put together. Worth checking out. The only caveat is I will say I don't know what the cost implications are. I don't know what if you get charged if you click on at this stage, or you only get charged once you're viewing a report. So just be aware that that is a question. Okay. We will look at Bloomberg briefly. Bloomberg is not very good for LaraViews, I will say, nor does Bloomberg have an advanced search. And finally, Bloomberg, you have to use Boolean searching all the time. There is no plain or natural language on Bloomberg. So if you just throw in words, Bloomberg absolutely will interpret every single space between your words as the connector and, whether you want it or not. So you have to tell Bloomberg if you don't want it. So looking at our search and browse tab, all legal content, just to back up my claim that Bloomberg is not very good on LaraViews, I'm going to choose secondary sources. I'm going to get to LaraViews, and I'll do this going to the plus to get further detail. And as you scroll down, there are a whole lot fewer LaraViews on Bloomberg than on the other two services, including the fact that there are no Hofstra LaraViews. So I have a bone to pick with Bloomberg on that. Those of you who work for the journals might want to contact Bloomberg and do something about that. Anyway, that's all I have to say about Bloomberg, unless there are questions. I mean, it's not to say don't use Bloomberg, but that's one of we're talking about thinking critically and comparing and contrasting, so that's exactly what I'm doing here, is I'm saying they're not as good for LaraViews, but they do have good, we saw treatises last week, so. Okay, how many of you have used Hein Online for LaraView articles? Nope. Okay, some yes, some no. Okay, so for those of you who have, bear with us if you would be so kind. Hein Online is another subscription database. It's one of those databases I told you about that can be very cost efficient if you are in an organization that subscribes, because it's flat fee. Once you subscribe to Hein Online, you can search it 24/7. I promised you last week and didn't quite get to it. We will also look at CCH and RIA today when we talk about the treatises workshop, but they are other examples of databases where you can get secondary sources, either treatises on CCH and RIA, and Hein Online will take a look and look at LaraViews. So here we're on the library homepage. You all can get here. It's just off the, okay, I don't see anybody panicking, so I'll assume you can all get here. This is one way. You can search up here for Hein Online, whatever your favorite way is. Okay, I am now not plugged in, so you need to log in. I imagine you all run into this. So when you see this Hofstra University Library Lexicat login and unique ID, this is your 700 number. The nice thing is, once I've logged in, okay, we shouldn't have to do it again. So here is Hein Online, and here's the Law Journal Library. We'll actually be coming back to Hein Online throughout the semester because there's a lot of other good stuff on there that you may or may not know about. But we'll take a look at the Law Journal library. The reason why a good number of you have seen Hein Online, I am guessing, is because you've done work for journals and you want to see PDFs, right? Am I guessing right for some of you at least? Okay, good. So the advantage to Hein Online over Lexis or Westlaw or Bloomberg is the PDF. And the reason that can be an advantage is that if there are pictures or charts in the article, which isn't that frequent, but it does happen, you may or may not see them on Lexis or Westlaw. You will see them on Hein Online. You also get the more accurate pagination, which I'm guessing is why a lot of the journal folks prefer it. So I'm not going to go into too much detail with Hein Online. You'll notice that there is a search capability. It's minimal in terms of using Boolean. It's more a function of, so here's kind of the Boolean choices you get, and then you choose what part you want to search. The other feature I'll point out about Hein Online, if you do already have a citation to a journal article, if you click on the citation tab, the citation navigator is rather nice. Because if you already have it, you can just plug it in there and actually you can guess. It even pulls up the journal name for you. Okay. So I'm not going to go into any more detail on Hein Online. You can all go in and throw in search terms and pull up results as well as I can. But if there are questions, I'm happy to go in and show. Okay. All right. So let's then take a look at one other way to find law review articles. And that would be using an index. And specifically for law review articles, the index to legal periodicals. Anybody use that? Okay. The index to legal periodicals is not something you'll want to use every single time you need to do research and want to look at law review articles, but it is a great resource when, again, you run into that problem. You've gone on Lexis, Westlaw, or Google Scholar, you've plugged in your words, and you're pulling up articles with your words, but it has nothing to do with the concept that you're interested in. So we saw the title search in the advanced search of Lexis and Westlaw is one option. Another option is this index to legal periodicals. Again, if you are somewhere that has a subscription, this is a separate database. The way you find it here at Hofstra, again, you can do the search in the Find Online Resources, or the way I prefer to go is the topic list from the library homepage. Because I know I'm looking for law review articles, I go to the article finding topic, and then I scroll down to I for index to legal periodicals. Now I don't want foreign legal periodicals, I want regular legal periodicals. And if I hadn't already logged in, authenticated with my name and 700 number, it would have asked me to do that. There you did it. Question?
From the online research resources page, how did you get to Article Finder again?
I went to topic, and then I went to article finding. I'm not sure where you are. And then from article finding, I went to index to legal periodicals.
Okay.
So what you see here is a format that you will see frequently in, okay, another librarian term, sort of bibliographic databases. So we talked about bibliographic awareness, being aware of the resource you're looking at. So bibliographic databases are databases that search the information about the resource, not necessarily the full text. They still can search the full text, maybe. So there are advantages and disadvantages, right? If full text has some of your search terms, you don't know the title or, what it's, you can throw in your search terms, and sometimes the full text can be great. But as at least some of us have agreed, sometimes you search the full text and all you get is nonsense back. So sometimes it's actually good just to focus on the bibliographic information, like title, like we did on Lexis and Westlaw. Or here, the index is sort of like that title search, but a little extra. So what we saw when we searched the library catalog in the advanced search was this multiple box format, and we see it here again on the index, and we'll see it a little later on today when we look at non-legal indexes. But what you want to think about, because you're not necessarily searching full text, is you want to choose your words a little more carefully. I'm not searching every single word, so I'm not going to have my long string of HMO or health maintenance or managed care and LIAB. I'm going to just choose the basic words. Okay, so LIAB star. What's the star? Asterisk if you prefer. Okay, don't look in the sheets that I gave you for Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg only. Okay, you don't.
Character wildcard.
Character wildcard, possibly, but I want to get libel, liability.
It's a root.
So I want a root expander or a truncation symbol. So I'm on a new database now. I'm not sure how to do this. Now, I plug that in there. Obviously, I've done this before. But if you're not sure, and this is, again, a technique for you go to a new database and you're really not sure how to do any of this, you could just guess, which honestly, what I do when I go to a database and I want to know the truncation, I either put the exclamation or I put the star. And if that doesn't work, then I go to help. Remember the help. Help can be really useful. So I know I'm interested in searching. And scroll down, and here's where you kind of want to know what everything is called, because we want to know this is wildcard and truncation symbols. We might also want to investigate proximity searches, but for now the question is wildcard and truncation symbols. So it tells me the wildcard is, now a wildcard is not the same as truncation. A wildcard is a single character. So for instance, if I'm searching British works, and I'm searching the word color, they like to put U's in the middle of everything. Don't ask me why with the Brits. Or labor. Labor might be a better example. They like to put U in labor too. So if I want to put, that would be a wild card. Or women, plural, and women, singular, I would put a wild card in there because I'm not sure if it's going to be an A or an E, or I'm not sure there's going to be a U in there. And you'd scroll down here because we're not really interested in wild cards. We're interested in truncation, and I would learn, sure enough, it is the star or asterisk. It's not the exclamation. So again, the moral of the story, go ahead and guess. If guessing doesn't work, then look and help. That's kind of, when all else fails, read the directions. My dad always used to say that. Okay, so we want liability, and yeah, let's just throw in HMO. And yes, if I search health maintenance organizations, I will get different results. Again, this is a flat rate database, so if you do have access to this somewhere, you can search your heart's content. Again, you're welcome to come back to Hofstra to use it. And you can see it's pretty much, because it's just like the title search, it's just searching the information about the articles, not the full text. You're narrowing in a little bit better. Now, that doesn't always happen. You may not be as successful, but again, I would only use the index when my full text searching on Lexis, Westlaw, Google Scholar is not working for me. Some advanced features on the index to legal periodicals, and some of you had asked about how to do this in the catalog, which we went over a little bit last time, but this is kind of a review, is you find wherever the word subject is. So for instance, here's subject. So I'm thinking, oh look, I got, how many did we get? I got 85. That's kind of, I could sort of scroll through it. That's kind of a lot. I want to really narrow it down. So what I might do is take a look at the subjects. And the subjects, so standardized subject headings for all of the articles. So the standardized subject heading, so there's a standardized heading for healthcare industry malpractice liability. That sounds pretty on point, right? So I might choose that. So now I get the 53 articles that have that standardized subject heading. If I want to narrow it further, I can go back to subject, and I can say, well, okay, so now I've looked at that generally. Let's see what actually talks about federal preemption. So I'm going to narrow it. So it's going to have both subject headings, so I'm going to narrow it further. And you can do the same on the catalog. It's just the links. You click on the links and it's slightly different places. Okay. as you can see, some of these articles, this database, the Index of Legal Periodicals, gives us a link to the PDF. How nice, you don't even have to find it anywhere. Here's one to the HTML full text. If you don't need the PDF, that's fine too. You won't always see both of those. It looks like we have for a lot of these here. So here's an example where we don't have a link to the full text in any format. Anybody have any ideas what we could do?
Troy Hine Online.
Or
LexisNexis or Westlaw.
Lexis, yeah. What I would do, I'd copy the title and I'd go on my favorite database, Lexis, Westlaw, Hine, whatever I have available to me, whatever I have open, if I have it available to me, copy, paste, see if they have it. Obviously no guarantee, so let's see, St. Louis University Law Journal, Lexis, Westlaw, Hine Online will have that. They may not have every single one. Journal of Law, Medicine, and Ethics, for instance, I don't know if that's going to be on Lexis or Westlaw. Thankfully here, we could get to it for the full, with the PDF full text or HTML. But so just keep that in mind. Keep in mind the resources you already have. You can mix and match. There's no rule to say that you can't. Okay. So sense of question.
Yeah. So in the beginning, like when you first saw me actually phrasing quotes, and then you took it out, I was just wondering like, if you knew what the difference in process was in terms of the results I could get by taking the quotes off. Will it still return mostly like sources that use the phrase exactly as you have it, or is it just going to be completely random where just has the word in the document?
Which database are we talking about?
I guess across all of them really, whether it's Google or I don't know if they are different in that sense.
So they use different search algorithms, and I mean we're talking in Google. It's their super top secret. I mean that's what makes Google its gazillions that it makes. My understanding of how the natural language works is, at least for Lexis and Westlaw, and I don't know honestly if Google works this way or not. My guess is probably, but a whole lot more sophisticated than what I'm explaining, is that what Google does is it takes your word, not Google, what Lexis or Westlaw does is it takes your words and the computers, which computers are really good at comparing and contrasting, it looks at how often those words appear in the database. If the words appear not very often, then it gives it more importance because, right, if the word law is going to appear a whole lot, it's not that important when in helping you find the document. Whereas the word, I'm trying to think of a good one, promissory, that's a pretty unusual one. That one they're going to give more weight. It will also compare them looking together. So it will, Lexis and Westlaw will look and identify certain legal phrases. I think also in their algorithm they've loaded in a legal dictionary. So standard legal phrases like self-incrimination, probably Lexis and Westlaw will identify as a phrase and give more weight to the documents that use it as a phrase than rather have self on page 2 and incrimination on page 48. Google, I don't really know. My guess is it does a lot of that comparison, which is why its results are so frequently so good.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, kind of like, once you take it out of the quotes, are you really even going to yield results that use it in that exact phrasing? Or is it just going to be sources that use it at a higher frequency, those individual words, rather than the phrase itself?
I think what will happen is the ranking. The phrases will surface up to the top because I guess the algorithm will guess that the phrase is more likely than the words used separately. I think, again, Lexis and Westlaw will identify the legal phrases, so putting self-incrimination in quotes is probably less important than putting health maintenance organization in quotes because health maintenance organization isn't a standard legal phrase, although it is a standard English phrase. What I would say is in terms of thinking about when do I use quotes and when do I not use quotes when you know you want the phrase. If you don't want the phrase, obviously don't. And possibly if you forget to use the quotes, it may or may not make a difference. What I do sometimes when I'm in a rush is I'm typing in and I don't bother, I forget to use the quotes, and then the results I get back are, whoa, this isn't useful, and then it's like, oh, I should use quotes. So honestly, that's the sort of thought process I would recommend. Other questions? Okay. So let's go ahead and dive into our first workshop. And make sure I give you this workshop. What I'm going to ask you to do here is just to take a look at Lexis, Westlaw, and the Index to Legal Periodicals and Bloomberg, as well as the Index to Legal Periodicals. I've bolded questions. Please do those first. And please make sure that you do question 7, which is bolded, because that's the Index to Legal Periodicals question. And I'm asking you to do that just because I'm guessing you have the least experience with that, so doing a workshop on it and having me here to answer questions would be the most useful. And then we'll see when we start to finish up on this, and we will be taking a break at some point. I'm just sort of judging it on seeing how we go and finding the best time for it. Searching when, again, you'll be using this for Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg, not for Google. We would have to look at that help feature to see if the Index to Legal Periodicals lets us use some of these /p and /s, some of the proximity connectors. If you're having trouble doing a Boolean search, you know you need Boolean because you're doing a search within results or your plain language isn't working. Take advantage of the 1-800 number on Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg. They are really helpful. It's free. And they will help you if you really need to construct a super extreme Boolean with nested parentheses and all that fun stuff. They will help you do it. So, and that 1-800 number for Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg good not only for extreme Boolean searches, but if you need help finding something online. Good resource to know about, again, free. They have the live chat if you prefer to do it that way. And they are close to 24/7. They may take off a couple of hours at some point in the wee hours of the morning. But for the most part, they are available 24/7. Okay, any questions before we move to non-legal databases? Okay, so we're going to focus on non-legal scholarly databases for the moment, since we're talking about secondary sources. Later on in the semester, we'll take a look at other more factual type of research, also non-legal necessarily, but not more of the scholarly. For most of this, you probably will want to come back to Hofstra or to go to another university, university library that's available to you. Because I can't imagine there's too many firms or legal organizations subscribing to these databases. So here at Hofstra, we're going to go and look at what Axon Library makes available to us. And in a way, you kind of have to know that because we click on Research and Instruction off of the library's homepage. You have to know to click on Axon Library. And what the folks at Axon do for us is provide a service that we librarians call federated searching. Don't worry about remembering that. I'm surprised I still remember that. But basically, because Google, everybody loves Google. And everybody loves Google because it's that nice, simple box. You don't even have to think about 3 boxes and what to put in each of them and drop downs. It's just a nice, simple box. So here is Axon Library's Google box, or federated search if you want the librarian term for it. So, and you can use this. That we will take a look at the one search box, and then we'll look at slightly more advanced searching. Why would you want to do this? Why do you care? A question I hope to remember to keep on asking a lot. Yeah, question. Sorry. So we start at the library homepage here. And go to Research and Instruction. You can also Google Axon Library Hofstra. and then Accent Library. So why do you care about why do you care about doing non-legal research? Well, take our client, for instance. So we had talked about, and Nick, I think it might have been you, forgive me if it was Nick, somebody mentioned you need to know more about these HMO contracts. And what's the standard for these HMOs making these decisions, right? Is it negligent, or is this in the course a standard business judgment? Is there any standard by which these people are held to so that we could say they didn't meet that standard? So you need to know more about how these plans are managed, perhaps. So that might be an example of why you might want to do some non-legal. So this isn't a legal question. It's how does this business work? You know, what rules, if any, do they go by? So if we decided we wanted to delve into that, we might try this one search. So our managed care plan administration. Yeah, these are terms we haven't used. We've talked a little bit about managed care. So we know that term. But it's not a legal search, right? Because we're interested in just how all of that works. And what the one search does is it searches the many different databases that Accent has made available for us. So we don't have to figure out, do I need to go to JSTOR? You've all heard of JSTOR from undergrad, I'm guessing, right? Okay, JSTOR, there's another database called Academic Search Complete. These are all great databases. If you wanted to go there, that would be good too. I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. You just, like Google, you put in your terms and up come results, and maybe they're useful, maybe not. So just to give you a brief sense, so integrating healthcare, organization, culture, hospital, so Medicaid, not really us. Third-party claims administration, managed care, maybe. So we might want to try an advanced search. As I mentioned, we will see this multi-box format for a lot of databases. We saw it for index legal periodicals. Actually, the library catalog has the advanced search, looks like this. And here we see the same for one search. So we might, this wasn't the greatest search, so we might want to get a little more specific, perhaps. And again, most of these databases, these indexes are flat rate, so if you do have access to it in your firm or organization, which again, for the non-legal stuff, I doubt, but you might, you don't have to worry about time efficiency or searching or pulling up results or any of the things we've talked about with cost efficiency with Lexis and Westlaw, other than your time, of course. You don't want to waste your time. So we're trying different search terms. So we're talking about, we want to find out what the rules are for denial. You know, there's a denial of coverage. So let's see if that's any better. And again, just to show you the advanced search. External review of coverage denials by managed care organizations. Oh, California. Right. Still might be interesting. Just if there's anything more general, but not perfect. Devil in the details. Managed care and unforeseen costs of utilization review. We've run across that phrase. A couple of you in the screencast questions asked about how do I find terminology? How do I find better terminology? One way is just to be thinking when you're going through results. Even if the results aren't great, just notice terms that sound like they might be useful. Like you were saying, as you've been doing some of our workshops, you're learning terminology for this one particular area you're interested in. That's a great technique. So we run across utilization review. We saw it in the index and the treatise. We saw it, I think, a couple of times in either ALR or, question.
Yeah, scrolling up, what categories did you put in for coverage and denial? Did you put them under all text or subject terms?
I left them with
field.
open.
Okay.
I tend to do that because I don't know where it's going to wind up. Maybe it is a subject heading. Remember, the subject headings are very narrowly defined. The people who create these databases create this whole huge long list of subject headings, and you have to have the right terminology. So rather than guess a terminology, I'll look at the subject headings once I find something useful so I can already see what it is. So I might, for instance, I might look at the subjects in this one, even though it's about California, because if there's a good subject heading that's not California specific, I would learn from that. Okay, so again, learning terminology from your search. And notice again with this database, some of them it gives us the full text right here up front. So this looks useful, and there's the full text. I would, that's a beautiful thing. Emerging denial prevention strategies, that might be interesting to look at. Children, not so interesting. So you'll notice some of these are, I mean, they may not be relevant, but some of them have the PDFs, some of them do not. And once again, if that's the case, now unfortunately these articles, we can't copy and paste and put in Lexis and Westlaw because they're non-legal. Highly unlikely you will find too many of these. There may be some crossover here with legal stuff, but not so much. So for instance, this first one is California, so may or may not be interested, but, and it's in the Journal of Empirical Legal Studies. Now it is legal, so it might be Lexis Westlaw, might not. So let's assume for the moment it's not. One other way to find these non-legal articles is to go to a different feature that Axon provides for us. So here's one search, here's back one search, and that would be Journal Finder. A couple of you were understandably, very logically, a little bit confused between Journal Finder and Index to Legal Periodicals. Index to Legal Periodicals is kind of it's more of an article finder, and it's obviously specific to legal, given the name. Journal Finder will help you find journals in all the bazillion, not bazillion, but maybe million, bunch of databases at Axon. So the way you use Journal Finder is for mostly non-legal, actually does have some legal, and you plug in the name of the journal, not the article. So that's another big difference between Journal Finder and Index Legal Periodicals. Journal Finder helps you find journal titles. Think of the name, journal titles. So, Journal of Empirical Studies. Let's hope I spelled everything right. And you can see, actually, it turns out it is on Hein Online, so it is in one of our legal databases. And this tells us it's on LexisNexis Academic. That's Lexis's non-legal version, which suggests to me, oh, it might also be on the legal version. Journal Finder doesn't cover Lexis and Westlaw. So I know it's a little complex, but think of Journal Finder. You use that for non-legal mostly, and Index Legal Periodicals if you're looking for legal articles. Okay, and I promised to show you another way to do scholarly non-legal research is to get a little more specific and look at databases by subject. And we have a whole list of subject categories. So if you were interested in health sciences and medicine, so what this has done is it's limited the databases here to the different databases that are available having to do with health sciences. I have sometimes what I like to do, a couple of you recognize, some of you didn't. Sometimes I'll go to specific databases. You could use one search. It's really just where you're more comfortable. I sometimes like to go to these general multi-subject because I don't want to guess what subject heading it's under or what general. So here's that academic search complete that I mentioned that I'll search a lot. And again, a couple of you at least recognize JSTOR. These are general interest but scholarly databases. So non-legal. So you could try the one search, or you could get more specific or go to one of these general ones. There's no right answer. Basically, wherever you find something useful. Questions? Okay. How many of you still have a library card from your local public library? Anybody have a New York Public Library card? Anybody know? Did you know that you could get one? Are any of you?
It's still free?
It's still free.
Okay, then, yeah.
Are any of you wondering, why do I care? That's okay. That's a good question. Why do you care? I care because I'm a librarian and I love that stuff, okay? But I get it that you might not, okay? Believe me, I do get that. So why might you care? You might care because there are databases that are available to you for free, big capital letters, for free through the libraries. You do have to have a library card though. So for your local public library, you have to be a resident of that jurisdiction. So I live in Long Beach. I can go to the Long Beach Public Library and take a look at the research and look at databases by subject. And so here's a listing of subjects. So if I were doing research for our client from home in my pajamas, it's a good thing. I could go and I might take a look at Health Reference Center Academic, possibly ProQuest. I would go to the At Home and it would ask me to plug in my library card barcode, my library card barcode. I'm not going to make you watch me type it in because it'll probably take me a while not to do it with typos. But you get the idea and you can see the range of databases. Did you know there were databases available to you for free? All you had to do was show up if you're interested, obviously. Likewise, New York Public, and this is available to any New York State resident. So even if you don't live here on Long Island or you don't have to live in New York City, actually the New York Public Library is open to New York residents. The only caveat is that you do have to go there in person to set it up or to one of their branches. But because I went to the city and visited the big lions in front. One of my favorite things, cats and libraries. But anyway, so I went to the New York Public and I got my library card. And the neat thing too about both of these, local as well as New York Public, you also have access to ebooks. So if you want to download your favorite novels onto your iPad, Kindle, whatever, you can, if you sign up and have to go there, you can do that. Yeah.
So there's two parts. There's one for your county, and then there's one for the actual, like, Beatty Public Library in near Bryant Park. That one.
Right.
Okay.
So for the big one near Bryant Park, you just have to be a New York State resident. For your local public library, you have to be a resident of that jurisdiction. So if you live in Levittown, you go to the Levittown Public Library. East Meadow, the East Meadow Public Library. You get the idea. So also a way to do non-legal research. Again, at home in your pajamas, as I said, I think always a good thing. Okay, questions. So we have come to the end of secondary sources, and what I'd like to do is, before I distribute the assignment, and we will go over the assignment in some, at least the instructions in detail, I like to do a review of what's important. I've thrown a whole lot at you. So what I want to do is ask you what has surfaced for you as the major things to think about with secondary sources. So this way, if you tell me what you've already noticed, then I don't repeat it to you, repeating something you already know. So what are the aspects of secondary sources that are important? Why do we care? Why do you want to go to secondary sources? Let's start with that.
To learn like background stuff.
To get some background about your topic, yeah, absolutely. Probably the top reason. What else would they do for us? Yeah, refer you to those all-important primary sources as well as possible useful other secondary. We were just talking about terminologies. Start to introduce us to some of the terminology. We didn't know, at least I'm guessing some of you didn't even know the words ERISA preemption existed. Now you know we have to worry about it. We talked about utilization review. There's another phrase we learned about. Okay, so that's a little bit of the why do you care. Hopefully I have started to convince you that secondary sources might be a good place to start rather than diving right into case law first thing, at least if you don't know much about a topic and it's a fairly complex one. It's not to say never start with cases, but... Okay, so using secondary sources, what are some good tools? I've thrown a whole lot at you. What are some good ones that you remember? Starting with the free source, Google being a very good one. Yeah, absolutely.
But then you can transition into Google Scholar, which has the articles, which is where that.
So, source for Google Scholar specifically, Google Books, another free source, although fewer books available on Google Books are more limited. What else? What about specific features of secondary sources? So, treatises and encyclopedias. Yay, table of contents! Hooray, table of contents and indexes. And actually, again, from the screencast, and I'll go over those questions in just a moment, ways of finding terminology. In fact, utilization review, where we saw that was in the table of contents and index of that treatise we were looking at online. We may not have run across that. That may turn out to be a really useful term. If you can at least get to a secondary source that's useful, look at the table of contents or scan through the index. Make your best guess. Go in the index. Even if your word isn't there, look around. Just flip the pages or scroll up and down, whichever format you're in. See what you learn that way. What else do we want to remember to do?
Start your search, not so like narrow, be a little broad, because then you can narrow later on. But if you narrow right away, you might miss something or overlook something that you might need.
I think that depends. Starting broad has the advantage of being cost effective if you're worried, if you're in a transactional environment where every transaction gets charged. I think what you really want to think about is being flexible. Sometimes I like to start pretty narrow because I want to see, hey, am I going to get lucky and get what I want right away? But if I don't, not to give up and say, oh, nothing's there, then maybe go broad. Someone else had a hand up.
Check the
Update, absolutely. Thank you. I was waiting for an opportunity to do that. I haven't done it all class. Okay, absolutely. Online, remember, check the iLink. If you're in print, look at the copyright date. Absolutely, check the bibliographic information. Thank you. We saw some advanced features, title searching today. Extreme Boolean, not so extreme Boolean to help us out if our plain language isn't working so well. Indexes. Caveat. I've thrown a whole lot of stuff or tools. Remember our theme, tools, our toolbox theme. I've thrown a lot of stuff at you. You don't necessarily have to use every single one every single time. In fact, you don't want to use every single one every single time. The index, probably index legal periodicals, you're not going to use it unless Lexis and Westlaw full text either isn't available, and that is, or isn't working. Likewise, the title advanced search. And as you do this more, you'll learn which tools are better for which circumstance. So that's why we try to do as much research as we can in class to give you at least a little bit of experience. Any other thoughts? So some of the screencast questions I've been promising to go over in my pile. Here's my pile. So I've tried to answer some of these as we've gone throughout, so I'll skim over those. So what I'm doing here, whoops, that's not what I want to do here. What I want to do here, there's what I want to do here. Okay. So going through the screencast, the very first one, I was a little bit surprised, but so I figured that's why I go over them and go over. One of the questions I asked, true or false, you always start with an encyclopedia. And a bunch of people said true, and of course it's false. It's not sadly, that's not an always for in any circumstance. It'd be easier if it were. It'd be nice if I could just tell you, start here, step 1, start here, then go here, step 2, step 3. Sadly, research isn't that easy. Probably if it was, there wouldn't be a whole course in it like there is. Encyclopedia is a good place to start, but actually Google free source, also a good place to start. Depending on your topic, encyclopedia might not be that great. We discovered for our topic, AmJur and CJS were kind of pretty terrible. ALR was good though. So not always. Somebody asked, I had mentioned in the screencast about keeping a research log. Not really going to have an opportunity to go into detail on that, but here on class web links, and a lot of the, no, actually it's not class web links, it's handouts. So class web links, a lot of the websites we go to will be here. So actually you'll notice our Bloomberg websites are here. And if it's not there, it's in handouts. And if it's not in one, just check the other like I'm doing now. And here are a couple of sample research logs if you want to see what one looks like. And here's a description in the legal writing text by Amy Sloan that might be useful. So hopefully that can give you some guidance. Someone asked about more information about advanced Google. We went into that when we talked about the site search. Remember, SITE : and put in the URL. And then you can search that website using Google. We'll be doing that again. In other words, how to use Google to find rules of law, basically learning how to use free methods of legal research. So we started talking about Google for secondary sources. We will definitely look at Google and other free sources for primary sources. We talked about Google Books. The Google Books database is pretty extensive. The problem is copyright issues. We won't have access to the entire book or maybe any of the book, even if it's mentioned in Google Books. So it's a kind of hit or miss proposition, Google Books. We took a look a little bit at some print treatises last time. We'll be taking a look at some we'll have a workshop on some print statutes for those of you looking at, wanting more experience in looking at the books. So here it is, tips on figuring out best terms to use when looking in an index of a secondary source. Just scan, scan up and down and do your best guess. If you're having difficult time finding the terminology, take a look at the table of contents. Then you don't even have to guess. You can just flip through and see chapters sound relevant now, chapter 9 sound, and then start learning, seeing what terminology is used in the table of contents. Which secondary source is the most persuasive? That goes to one of the questions in the treatises. Probably the best way to find really persuasive secondary sources is to ask experts in the field. So, for instance, I was mentioning Nimmer on copyright. We'll take a look at, in a moment, another treatise, this time in antitrust, Arita on antitrust. We librarians, not a bad source either, although I'm biased, but I would say research guides, because they're prepared by people who are sitting down thinking, what are the good sources? Either librarians who've spoken to experts and we know what the good sources is, or the experts in the fields themselves. I would use a secondary source in a brief. I do so carefully, but you'd want to use reputable ones. So treatises are a good idea. Law review articles also. Don't use encyclopedias, please. I would use ALR. Those are more resources to help you learn the basics of the area. Someone was not quite sure the difference between corpus juris secundum and American jurisprudence. Coke and Pepsi is the difference. Competing publishers. So which is why you'll find CJS on Westlaw, but not on Lexis. Actually, AmJur is on both for historical reasons. New York, the difference between CJ Amdur and New York jurisprudence is the difference between a national and state. New York jurisprudence is specific to New York law, not surprisingly given the name. Do I have a preference? It's obviously for New York law, New York juror. If it's not New York law, I probably would go to either Amdur or CJS. I like Amdur out of habit. It's not that it's better than CJS, it's just habit. How often are print treatises updated? You have to check the copyright date and whatever supplement pocket part that might go with that treatise. So speaking of treatises, several questions on using catalogs. We took a look at Lexicat. I tried to show you some of the advanced features with the subjects. What I showed you today in the index. The concept is the same in terms of clicking on subject headings. You'll find the subject headings maybe not on the side as a filter, but in the text. And if you need help, using a catalog, that's a good time to ask for help from a librarian. Speaking of which, as I mentioned, you're all welcome to come back once you've graduated, give us a call, and we can help you that way as well. Treatises, we do list, and lots of law libraries do this, list some of the treatises that are available on Lexis and Westlaw in our catalog. So it's just another way to find them if you happen to be a big fan of catalogs. Although it's kind of funny because another person asked, how do I not get lost using the catalog? And the answer to that question is ask for help. And no, the catalogs tend to be free. That was one question. And moving on to the restatements. This one I didn't actually understand this question. Discuss when to use newer restatements versus more recent ones. You tend to want to use the more current restatements. What's interesting about the restatements actually in making sure I was going to be able to answer all these questions, I took a closer look at the restatements on Lexis and Westlaw, and what's interesting about them, if I can get there relatively quickly, is that their information is different. So, Westlaw, you have this, there are lots of these different restatements, but to find out how up to date they are, again, you want to find the I-link, but you don't always get the actual publication date. Whereas on Lexis, they give you a little bit more, interestingly. I don't know how much any of you care about this level of detail, but someone did ask. So again, and yes, the supplements to the restatements are incorporated online. They're restatements. If you're not going online and you want to use the restatements in print, they're located at the reserve desk. So for instance, if I were to go to a restatement here, again, look for the I-link. There are different aspects to find out when it was actually published. Restatements are probably also not a bad secondary source to cite to. You would go to restatements, though, and cite to them, as mentioned in the screencast, mostly when you have a basic principle of law, something like a contract requires consideration. Yeah, we all learned that in first year, but sometimes you actually have to cite to a source that just, for completeness and all of that. And restatements are good for that. I mean, they go into more detail than that, obviously. But I think that that's probably the most frequent reason why you would cite to a restatement and honestly want to go back and do research. Because the point of the restatements, these experts sit down and they try to work out what are some principles that we can all agree on. Get a bunch of lawyers in the room and try to get an agreement, right? 4 lawyers in the room and you get 8 different opinions. So that's what the restatements try to do. Someone asked why they're criticized as flawed, and that's probably because they get too oversimplified. Although I don't really know the answer to that, but that would be my guess. which is the best restatement to use, I would scan and look at the titles. If I'm not sure, maybe I would do a keyword search. Again, if I have it available to me on Lexis and Westlaw, I'd see which restatements come up and which sounds most relevant. As we saw on Westlaw, there are actually quite a lot out there in terms of the different areas that are available in addition to contracts and property. Law governing lawyers on ethics. I mean, you can see trusts, tort, well, of course you would guess. So quite a few. No, they are not available on the internet for free. That was another question. Either come to the library and use the print, or you go to Lexis, Westlaw, or Bloomberg. If you have Bloomberg available, they are Bloomberg's flat rate, remember, so you wouldn't pay extra as you might, depending on your contract with Lexis or Westlaw. But Bloomberg also has fewer of the restatements available. Actually, Westlaw has the most as far as I can see. And that's as of today. It could change tomorrow. Okay. Any questions? So I'm going to hand out the assignment if when is accurate on its timing, it should now also be available on Twen, obviously. And you will find it on Twen on the assignments link. And what I will be asking you to do is due in 2 weeks by 4 o'clock, 2 weeks from today, and I do that specifically so no one's tempted to skip class to finish their assignment. And yes, it is available now. What I will ask you to do is download it and then into Word, and then you can answer the questions. If you actually keep the questions in, that would be helpful, but if you don't, that's okay too. And email me, remember putting your name on it, please. Email me your answers by 4 o'clock in 2 weeks from today. More specifically, in the instructions, so put your name on, answer all parts. As you will see, if you take a look at pages 2 and 3, I have questions and then I have subparts to the questions. You are lawyers, you need to be methodical, make sure you answer all parts. I cannot give you credit if you skip a question. If you answer the question and it's not quite correct, I can still give you some credit. Okay, so that's answer all parts. I do ask you to put a word count for some of the questions. I have put a limit. The reason for that is I want you to think about your response and then choose the best part of your response and not just try to dump everything that you remember from class. As I mentioned, please email your answers. My email address is here. You may work together. Big or little group as you prefer, but make sure your answers are your own. So you should have different searches. Be creative. Maybe one of you try one search and one of you try another search. It's a nice way to learn. Your answers, your evaluations need to be your own. Obviously, as you'll see, everybody's searching the same issues, so you may come up with the same encyclopedia section. That's okay. That doesn't have to be a different answer. But what should be different is your search. What should be different is your evaluation of that search, the evaluation of that encyclopedia. I don't need blue book format, but when I see your answer, whether it's an encyclopedia section or a law review article or a treatise, I need to be able to find it. So give me enough information to find it. If you leave out a comma, I wouldn't know the difference. I'm not a blue book expert. But please let me know what the topic is of the encyclopedia, what the title is of the law review article, as well as the journal, obviously, and volume and page. So again, just, what would be the easiest way to find this? Give me that information. If you are in the habit of doing it in blue book form, I won't have a problem with that, but not required. Last but not least, when I ask you for evaluation, telling me that you're used to it is not a good answer. The whole point of taking this class is to learn new stuff. So familiarity is not a good basis on which to judge or evaluate a resource. So, another hypothetical. You have a client, always a good thing, who wants to introduce yet another bottle tea product. By the way, this hypothetical is what we will use for all of the 5 assignments. So this bottle tea product, this one will be different, she hopes, because it's unsweetened, to appeal to the health and weight conscious market. She will need to engage in massive marketing campaign in order to compete with the many products already out there. She plans to highlight in her advertising materials and on the label that tea contains polyphenols, which is a substance to have been found to possibly reduce the risks of cancer and heart disease. She needs your help to avoid any liability under New York or federal law for false labels or advertising for food. Okay, so do a super quick issue spotting because I want you to all start on the right area. And I'm not going to go through all of them. These are up here to remind you of what to think about. But let's think about it. So question always, we want to do this research. What's our question? What does our client need help with?
Should also avoid liability for false labels or advertising on the new product on sweetened tea.
Okay, so what are going to be some of our search terms? We haven't gotten to the where, but that's okay. There's no rule on the order. There is a rule on having a tip on the marker, so I can write New York Federal. So what are going to be some of our search terms? What are some of our legal theories that we're going to be searching? What are some of the pertinent, important facts? I keep getting out of the blank here. So we want to be searching. See? Okay. Anything else? Get a whole lot if you just put in false advertising. There's a lot of advertising out there that can be false. Food, labels, liability. Now you may not want to put all of these all at once, right? You could try. Do you think it's going to be, give it a try, that specific? What I'd say is always, as I answered Adam earlier, sometimes I like to be very specific to see how lucky I get, but if I don't find anything with polyphenols, I'm not going to think, oh, nothing out there, I'm done. But we also talked about in terms of facts, food, right? Any other aspect of our facts, sort of in between tea, and tea is okay. And I'm not saying any of these are the right answers or are the best terms. I want to get you in the habit of thinking sort of very narrow, specific polyphenols to very broad food to in between. Yeah. That might be interesting at some point. Yeah. We're starting with secondary sources. FDA might be interesting to investigate as we talked about looking at government sites. They may be the appropriate government. Okay. So this is a product, right? So do we want to be thinking about product liability? Yes? No? Why? Okay, we want to be thinking about false claims, but what's product liability? Torts for, it's a tort of, might be a strict liability, but pardon me? Okay, so we have a product. Is it defective? Do we have a product?
No.
Not yet, right? But is anybody going to be suing her because it's defective yet? Okay, so I pick that particular legal theory intentionally because in the past students have gone off in the product liability avenue. Understandably, you all were ready to do that too a minute and a half ago. But again, you want to think about, is this my facts? What is product liability and does it apply? And we've now decided no. Okay, so please ask me questions. Email me, find me in the office, at the reference desk, whatever works. When you're wondering, does she want? Does she mean? What does she mean by? And don't apologize for asking questions. That's my request. Because I'm asking you to ask the question. I try as hard as I can, and every year I see where people get confused, and I try to fix it. Sometimes I'm successful, and sometimes I'm not as successful as I'd like to be. So if you are confused, please ask. If you are confused because you know we did it in class and you can't remember, please ask. It's also the recordings, but you're welcome to ask as well. The point is, the more that you engage with this, think about it, and think, oh, I don't get that, the better. Not that you don't get it, the better, but the more you ask, the more you realize you need help, then that's a good thing. Okay? So we have a half an hour. I promised you time to finish the treatises exercise. We all did the print exercise in the library, so we can hang out here and finish it. And I will ask you to give me that as well as the one we just finished earlier today on Laura Davis. And I'll continue to wander around. Oh, and very important, next time we start primary sources, and specifically statutes, there's one more screencast. I mentioned it earlier. I'm going to remind you, please watch the screencast. Oh, yes, and the reminder, oh, you're good, thank you. Okay, on the treatises, let me get my copy. There is a typo, and the typo is the question number reference. I've got too many papers. What happened to the paperless society? So, on your copy, on question number 3, it reads, at present, from question 1, it should read from question 2. So cross out the 1 and put the number 2. And then in question 4, it says for the title in question 2, it should actually read for the title in question 3. Everybody see where I'm talking about it? So we're talking about the, I know you have a whole bunch of workshop papers in front of you. Workshop Part 2, Secondary Sources, Finding and Using Treatises. In question 3, change the number from 1 to 2. In question 4, change the number from 2 to 3. And I'll wander around. And then the only other reminder I will give you is please email me your exam schedule, and I'll do my best to get that settled as soon as we can.